Ogide, to the effect that President Buhari violated the constitution when he bypassed the National Assembly, authorizing payments for military fighter jets from the United States government. CoreTV tells us more.
The motion follows a letter sent to the Senate by President Muhammadu Buhari and read Wednesday by President of the Senate, coming under Order 15, 42 and 52 on Thursday. Ogide says the approval of money for purchase of a military jet without National Assembly's input was a violation of the Constitution and should be punished with impeachment.
This request that was sought by Mr. President from the Senate is procedurally wrong, and of course what has been read by the leader of the Senate this morning is that this matter is to be referred to the appropriate committee for the inclusion of this amount of money that has already been spent. This ought to have been the first request to this Senate by Mr. President before the money was spent. And we must put it on record very clearly. There is a violation of our process, and it's a violation of the procedure as, of course, enunciated in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of 1999 as amended.
Seconding the view for President Muhammadu Buhari's impeachment, Senator Chukwuka says the bypass of the National Assembly is a grave offense with consequences spelled out in the Constitution. He insists that the National Assembly exists to make laws and apply them where necessary for the good of the country.
Several other such constitutional breaches that are here before that are flying in the face of this National Assembly. And this one again, our president, and even the funny aspect of this thing is that it's going to be this Tucano that is going to be supply helicopter. It's in 2020. It is not just this year.
President of the Senate, who says the impeachment move should be directed to the Committee on Judiciary for advice on merit of the motion, however, says the matter was brought to his notice when U.S. Congress members came to Nigeria to seek legislature's clearance for the purchase of a military jet.
We're on recess when I got the message from the U.S. ambassador that the Senate committee at the Congress of the United States wanted to visit us because they had got a request from President Trump to approve for payment to Tucanos, but they needed Congress approval.
Chuka Odita, CoreTV News, Abuja.
The Senate wants the federal government to immediately declare a state of emergency in Benue and other states where armed herdsmen have continued to kill unarmed Nigerians without provocation of any kind. This follows a motion raised by Senator George Akume during Thursday's plenary, where he calls for a concerted effort to end the killings in Benue, where 2 priests and dozens others lost their lives days ago. CoreTV tells us more once again.
According to Senator Akume, the number of deaths, maiming and destruction of property in Benue State alone have remained a source of worry, especially with the unprovoked killing of priests and worshippers during the church service and several others earlier. He listed some of the latest victims of the killing as Benue North-West Senatorial District, which comprises 7 local governments, especially Logu, Kwande, Agatu, Okboku, among several others.
Despite the military presence, there is no end to the wanton killings. I acknowledge the role of the Senate in containing this crisis by sending an ad hoc intelligence committee to Benue State to ascertain the true situation on the ground.
Senator Suleiman Adokwe, who in support of the motion says the federal government and security agencies need to work out new strategies for dealing with the killings in Benue, Taraba, Adamawa, Zamfara and others. He expresses worry that the killings are happening within distance of military formations in the states, but the military does nothing.
I want to quote the words of late Abacha: any insurgency that lasts more than 24 hours has the knowledge of government. And if government cannot deal with any insurgency within 24 hours, and this one is raging to over 3 months, it clearly shows whether the government knows or not. It can be properly interpreted to say that they know about it. If you don't know about it, you deal with it.
Senator Victor Ume, in his contribution to the motion, calls on government to take drastic measures to tackle the menace of armed herdsmen, adding that the country is gradually being divided along religious lines.
This killing of Tuesday inside a church where 2 reverend fathers were killed and 17 worshippers were also murdered
had opened a new vista in the challenges. It is just like gunmen running into a mosque, killing the imam and the worshippers in the mosque. The country cannot see this type of thing and come up with condemnation. Religion is a very volatile issue in any nation.
Senator Obinna Ogba, who suggested a joint convocation of Senate and House of Representatives on security situation in the country, says Senate should join force with the House of Representatives on the invitation of President Muhammadu Buhari to the National Assembly to deliberate on the way forward. The Senate thereafter resolved to resume plenary next Wednesday with the invitation of the Inspector General of Police to brief the lawmakers on the security situation in the country, as well as the detention of Dino Melaye. Chuka Odita, CoreTV News, Abuja.
The federal government has approved the establishment of ranches in 5 states in Nigeria to ease the farmers and herdsmen crisis. This followed the approval of the report of the National Economic Council's Sub-Technical Committee on Herdsmen-Farmers Conflict, which was recently set up by the federal government. Our State House correspondent, Ayo Bamikwache, has more details on this report.
The federal government of Nigeria has approved the establishment of ranches for livestock production in 5 states, which are Jigawa, Zamfara, Benue, Taraba, and Adamawa State, respectively. The governor of Ebonyi State, Dave Umahiwa, addressed State House correspondent after the meeting, said the committee recognized 3 categories of foreign, nomadic, and immigrant herdsmen, and therefore agreed that movement of livestock must be condemned in totality. He added that strategies must be put in place to improve the lives of local herdsmen through provision of educational and medical facilities within the vicinity of the ranches.
Touring through the states, we made it very clear to all the stakeholders that those that committed this crime must be prosecuted. And already a number of them, have been, arrested, and they have been prosecuted in the various states. So I can assure you that the security agencies are, doing a lot about, tracking them and prosecuting them.
So today I said to the media, this thing looks no more like herdsmen and farmers clashes. It's looking like an extension of Boko Haram. Because if you go to a church, you kill priests and members in the morning. And there's no cattle you're coming around with. You just arrive, take people by surprise, or you go to an IDP camp where people are returning to their villages, and just 2 a.m. you shoot everybody and march on. Something more sinister is going on.
Lagos State Deputy Governor Idayat Adebule further briefed on the address by the Accountant General of the Federation to Council and an update of the Economic and Growth Plan Model Labs as presented by the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning.
To the Accountant General of the Federation, the balance in the excess growth accounts as at April the 23rd, 2018 stands at 1,829,862,047.
On the issue of the $1 billion withdrawn from the excess crude account for security purpose and purchase of aircrafts, Jigawa State Governor spoke on behalf of Council on the matter.
Federal government tried, we couldn't get. The Americans still couldn't sell to Nigeria. Then luckily, the president said it's okay to buy. That's President Trump. So we have to quickly buy before they change their mind. Because there is also a deadline, and this is state-to-state transaction, no middleman. And we are all here concerned about security. And they're raising questions on how and manner on which you protect people. This is an emergency situation.
6 states made presentations to the National Economic Council on how successful they have been in the area of agricultural production as a means of youth empowerment and job creation, among other economic chains. From the Presidential Villa, Abuja, Ayo Bamikwache, reporting for CoreTV News.
The House of Representatives has deferred consideration of President Muhammadu Buhari's request for approval of extended $496 million
by the falling standards of the level of education in the country, and hope to develop modules that will enable them continue to put governments in check on improving the standards of education in Nigeria.
It is now time for the government to prove they are equally working towards financing public, equitable, inclusive, and free education.
For them, it is a call to demand accountability from the federal government and state government on delivering quality education to the Nigerian people, children and adults alike, under the Universal Basic Education Program.
The unfortunate reality here is that no child in Nigeria has the right to 12 years of education. And so some people may ask why. It's because the law does not make provision for it.
The goals, they agree, is to facilitate and provide equal opportunity to all Nigerians. But the question is how realizable. That question is what they seek to provide answers to. The Minister of Education, who was represented by the Deputy Director of Education Management Program in the ministry, says it is not in doubt of the capacity of the civil society groups to task relevant agencies of government to become accountable, and points out that the federal government recognizes the right of all Nigerians to quality education.
The mutual relationship that exists between active participation of the citizens and sustainable development cannot be undermined.
The call to action by the organizations to the federal government is to strengthen the public school systems, while states and local governments are to monitor and ensure free education, which must be qualitative, as it should be easily accessible. For the young Nigerian and an ambassador for the girl child education, there is no alternative to providing the girl child quality education.
Over the last years, we do more of signing. We sign numerous agreements on education, but we don't implement them and we don't sustain them. If we cannot sustain it, if we cannot implement it, please let us not sign it.
Osaiti Osadibame, CoreTV News, Abuja.
The Universal Basic Education Commission, UPEG, has expressed its readiness to conduct a comprehensive audit of all public and private basic education institutions in the country. The Executive Secretary of UPEG, Hamid Boboyi, who discussed this in Abuja, explains that the exercise is to enable the Commission obtain reliable data of both the personnel and students. Our correspondent, Gloria Kiba, tells us more.
The National Personnel Audit is meant to be carried out every 3 years in reference to the Universal Basic Education Commission Act 2004, Section 9F and L, so as to establish a basic education data bank and conduct research on basic education in Nigeria. But Boboyi says the Commission successfully carried out a personnel audit of public basic education institutions in Nigeria in 2006, and the last one was done in 2010, and the reports on these audits are already in the public domain. He harps on the need to ensure that the foundation of basic education is strong, as this will help to build a better society, adding that the audit exercise will enable the Commission identify the needs of each school and also develop proper policies that will boost the education sector.
Or is it 34? 34 now have so far submitted. We have only 3 states that are outstanding. I've also mentioned the incentivization of the whole process by the World Bank, where each state that has a review strategic plan is going to get $300,000 for that purpose. Because this is the basis of what we have to start developing this particular system. If we don't do that, it means we just keep on broken in the dark, having policies that are not related to the real problem that are on the ground.
The chairman of the National Personnel Audit Program, Edwin Jerome, notes that the Commission is raising the standards of public education with the audit exercise in ensuring that the best quality of education is maintained in public and private basic education at all times. Speaking on the level of preparedness for the audit exercise, he says the high-level monitoring team will be led by the Minister of Education, Adamu.
This activity will ensure that all our field officers get to every school. You can't stay in the motor park or under a tree and get information of a school. We will know from the GPS. On Monday 30th of April, the Honorable Minister of Education will be flagging off this activity to demonstrate practically in one of the schools here in the FCT what the field officers will be doing.
The national personnel audit is coming at a time when the government is making efforts for states to have their own education strategic plan, and the exercise will be carried out in conjunction with state and local governments and will entail personnel audits of teaching and non-teaching staff of all basic education institutions in Nigeria. According to the Commission, foot soldiers have been trained in GPS and use of computer to enable them upload data and to be monitored by the Commission. The National Personnel Audit will enable the Commission to obtain comprehensive and reliable data of children of school age enrolled in basic education schools and junior secondary schools. Clara Kiba, CoreTV News, Abuja.
Away from education, the Southwest People's Democratic Party says its internal democracy is currently being strengthened to reposition the party and its structure for an overwhelming victory for the party as well as wrestle power from the All Progressives Congress in 2019. The Southwest chairman of the party, Eddie Olafeso, who spoke on behalf of the party, made this declaration in Abeokuta, Ogun State.
6 chairpersons of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, in the Southwest converged on Abeokuta to discuss how to reposition the party for next year's election. In his charge to the party leaders present, Southwest Chairman Eddie Olafeso urged members of the party to shun selfish interests and work in unity that will position the PDP in limelight. On his part, Deputy National Chairman of the PDP challenged members of the party to continue to build confidence in themselves towards ensuring the party is ready to take over governance.
Era of the Southwest being the major discussion in negative discussion in Wadata is gone, because we can speak to ourselves and we can begin to resolve issues. We can begin to confront the challenges that the APC government has inflicted on the Nigerian people.
And we have to move with the trend of the changes in the party. One, let us try to love ourselves, and let us try to build confidence in our ability to perform. We can perform, we can move mountains.
While urging the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to stick to its statutory responsibility, the party also rejected the alleged meddling in its internal affairs, saying that Sikirulai Ogundele-led state executive is the authentic leadership of the party in Ogun State, recognized by the party.
We abhor INEC's interference in the affairs of our party, and thus declare this attitude as interloping and overbearing.
Going forward, the Southwest PDP says it will be holding a mega rally in Oshogbo, Osun State capital, to drum support for the party in the build-up to the governorship election in that state.
The former chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Alimodu Sharif, has collapsed the political structures in the opposition party and moved them to the ruling All Progressives Congress. Alimodu Sharif initiates plan to storm the All Progressives Congress National Secretariat with the supporters who aborted by the party's directives that he should go and register at his ward in his home state. Aneta Patrick reports that although Sharif did not visit the party as planned, his loyalists across the country were at the APC National Secretariat.
These are political leaders in their own rights, whom have switched alliance from the opposition People's Democratic Party to the ruling All Progressive Congress. Although Senator Sharif was absent at the secretariat, he made a strong presence with the structures he delivered to the party. They were received by National Chairman of the All Progressive Congress, Odigwe Oyegun, who presented the party's constitution. The new entrants, led by an APC chieftain, Cairo Ojugbo, explains their mission. His position was reinforced by a former Southeast chieftain of the party.
The former reception of all these members will take the form of a rally, either in Abuja, one in Abuja here, one in Imo State, and one in Sokoto. We are working on it already.
So officially, let every tongue and Harry know that we are now collapsing into APC.
Welcoming them into the party, leaders of the party have this to say.
And let me give you every assurance. Fortunately, we have an ongoing registration exercise. So we are going to register as members with the same status as any other member.
I want to thank you for taking this bold decision and to assure you that you have come home. Some of you, we have had cause to play politics together at different levels. I believe by virtue of the kind of persons you are, you will bring value to the APC.
So you can see there is no better history that we can benefit from than what is happening this evening. You are most welcome to APC.
Anita Patrick, CoreTV News, Abuja.
Nigerians have been charged to hold their representatives and those in public offices accountable if they fail to deliver on their mandates. The Executive Director, Yemi Ademolekun, gave this advice while addressing journalists on the Citizens' Guide to the recall process. Ibrahim Kari Livigbe has details in this report. Organized Labour Union is insisting on a minimum monthly salary of 66,500 naira, stressing that there is no going back on this demand by Nigerian workers. President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Ayuba Waba, reiterated the position of the labour movement at the Abuja Center of the North Central Zone in public hearing in Abuja. Union members at the public hearing by tripartite committee set up by President Muhammadu Buhari to review the minimum wage aligned with the NLC on the monthly minimum wage of 66,500 naira. Arita Faha reports from Abuja.
The two-day exercise being conducted simultaneously in the 6 geopolitical zones of the Federation holds between Thursday and Friday with a view to encouraging public participation in the process and share the expectations of the Nigerian worker. Workers say that the committee must, as a matter of priority, recommend an upward salary review that will ensure a decent living for Nigerian workers within the context of verifiable indices like inflation. The NLC president decried the current situation where workers generate the country's wealth but are forced to wallow in poverty.
Whether we like it or not, it is what we pay the workers that actually circulates within the economy. If you pay workers today, even Mama Put that sells in a small restaurant will know that a worker has been paid. If a worker is not paid, even the market woman will know that a worker has not been paid.
While speaking, representative of the Nigeria Union of Pensioners says that retirees are also confronted with the challenges of the present economic realities alongside age-related problems, which should compel the federal government review the current pension scheme, an action that is long overdue.
The entire Nigerian pensioners wish to request the Committee on National Minimum Wage Review to use its mandate to discuss and make recommendations to the federal government on the need for a minimum pension of 40,000 naira per month.
A member of the committee representing the FCT Minister, Mohammed Bello, agrees with the union's call and has this to say.
Committee members may wish to address their minds also to such other critical issues that pose serious threats to workers' pay packages. These include the need for affordable housing, transportation, medical care, as well as the costs of educating their children.
As the 2000 Workers' Day celebration draws closer, the labor unions are reminding federal governments of their demand for better work conditions reflected on housing, healthcare, education, among others, and consistent with present economic realities. Arit Ifanga, CoreTV News, Abuja.
River State Governor Yusuf Wike has declared that the state government will support rollback malaria partners towards developing formidable platforms to eliminate the disease in the state. He made this declaration at the government house in Port Harcourt, the state capital.
Governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, says his administration has made the fight against malaria a priority. He noted that the action-based communal efforts to eradicate malaria must be owned and driven by the grassroots with a broad-based platform.
For me, the fight against malaria goes beyond providing bed nets or ensuring access to an effective treatment regime. These are all important measures, but certainly not enough. Going by hindsight, we must move from this sense of complacency that malaria is preventable, diagnosable and completely treatable, and rather focus on the need to end malaria for good within the shortest possible period of time. This is clearly possible with a pragmatic action plan that's communal in focus and therefore owned and driven by the grassroots and which can be rolled out on a very broad scale. I wish to request the private sector to get involved in the fight to end malaria as a matter of enlightened self-interest and not that of charity.
In his address, the State Commissioner for Health, Prince Will Chike, stated that the state has one of the lowest rates of prevalence of malaria in the country. He maintained the need for elimination of malaria since it accounts for 60% outdoor visits to hospitals in the state and increased burden on health facilities.
As a state, there has been massive scale-up in the various intervention strategies to reduce the burden of malaria. The prevalence rate in Rivers State as of today is 7.3% compared to the national prevalence rate of 27%. And with all modesty, Rivers State ranks among the best 5 states in the country with reference to low prevalence. Indeed, our owners of long-lasting insecticides-treated nets is beyond 70%, clearly above the national average. The effort of Rivers State government to sustain this and indeed improve to its evident via, number 1, the provision of a sustainable political terrain which encourages partners, collaborations with the state. Number 2, there has been massive upgrade in infrastructure and equipment.
On his part, the South-South coordinator of the World Health Organization, Wale Famiyesin, said malaria-related deaths is still unacceptably high, with 446,000 in Nigeria alone, contributing to about 23 to the global deaths.
In Rivers State, the concerted efforts of the State Malaria Elimination Program in the Ministry of Health and Rivers State Primary Health Care Board and partners have helped to achieve prevalence of 7.3 in the use of nets, but uptake of intermittent preventive treatment in pregnant women is still very low. The key intervention for fighting malaria remains prevention with long-lasting insecticide-treated nets, indoor residual spraying, and chemoprevention in pregnant women and children.
Governor Wike used the occasion to urge civil society organizations and well-meaning individuals to contribute to ending prevalence of malaria in the state.
We'll take another.
Democracy allows for fair hearing. This is reckless. This is ungodly.
When news break, we engage experts in critical analysis.
Do you see your party coming into power come 2019?
This administration will succeed and succeed well.
You cannot be running a 4-year tenure like you are running a 20-year tenure.
He has done fairly well, especially where insurgency and terrorism.
Then it gets controversial.
They have the right to their opinion. Can we, very interesting gentlemen, just hold on.
I am about principle and I am about thought.
Now, you see, let me say this.
So that our soldiers will be free, we should also ask for justification.
Core Digest, your #1 program for current issues.
So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who...
Welcome back for stories outside Nigeria now. King Jong-un has played out a new history in relations with his neighbors as he becomes the first North Korean leader to set foot in South Korea since the end of the Korean War in 1953. In a moment rich with symbolism and pomp, South Korean leader Moon Jae-in and Kim shook hands at the border. Kim says it is the starting point for peace after crossing the military line that divides the peninsula. It comes just months after warlike rhetoric from North Korea, and much of what the summit will focus on has been agreed in advance, but many analysts remain very skeptical about the North's apparent enthusiasm for engagements. U.S. comedian Bill Cosby has been found guilty of 3 counts of sexual assault, each of which carries a potential 10 years in prison. The 80-year-old actor has been on trial for drugging and assaulting ex-basketball player Andrea Corstand in 2004. The judge ruled that Cosby, who happens to be the first major black actor on primetime TV, will remain out of jail until he is sentenced. He unleashed an expletive field rant after the verdict as prosecutors argued he should be denied bail. It was the second time the actor has stood trial for the allegations after an earlier jury failed to reach a verdict in June 2017. At the start of the trial in Pennsylvania, it was revealed that Cosby had paid Constant almost $3.4 million in a civil settlement in 2006. Around 60 women over 5 decades have publicly accused the Emmy Award-winning actor of being a sexual predator. A statute of limitation laws means that only one charge has been brought to trial. And a bit of sports now. Promoter Eddie Hearn says Anthony Joshua wants to see the money before agreeing to Deontay Wilder's $50 million unification fight offer. An American heavyweight Wilder posted a video on Twitter showing 28-year-old WBO, IBF and WBA title holder Joshua saying he would accept the fight for $50 million. But Hearn says he must be convinced the money exists before agreeing to the bout in either London or Vegas.